Hi, everyone. My name is David Drever. I'm a Microsoft M365 MVP as well as a security MVP with Portivity.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanne Klein. I'm also an MVP in M365 apps and security, and I work for my own consulting company, Next Novus. So what are we talking about today? We're still in insider risk management. What's the next topic we should cover?
So today, I think we've covered. Let me just so far we've covered insider risk management in general. We've done information protection. We've done data loss prevention. So that means today we're going to be talking a little bit about conditional access. And so with conditional access, that is very, very similar to the capabilities that you have with data loss prevention, in the sense that it integrates with a tool. In this case, instead of just reporting on the tool, you actually giving it the opportunity to help protect you with that tool. And so conditional access is actually a tool that exists in Entra ID. And what it does, it takes signals from various access points, whether you're logging in from a computer, from a phone, where you're logging in from, how you're logging in, the tools you're trying to get to, takes all that into account, and then it determines based on policies that you create what you're going to do with it. And so what's great about this is it allows you to focus on getting access to a feature or a workload within Microsoft 365, controlling that before you actually even get to the data within it. And so that's kind of what we thought we'd talk about today. And specifically in that, what are the conditional access and insider risk management integrations? And the first one here, Joanne, you talked about this in our last session, was adaptive protection. And similar to data loss prevention, you have integrations with conditional access on adaptive protection as well. So, if the environment detects you as a risky user, based on, how you're logging in, how you're dealing with your data. And in fact, I think, Joanne, you have actually forced your environment to make you a risky user at times, right? Didn't that take a lot of hoops to jump through to get that to happen?
It did. I actually did it to a fake employee I have in my tenant because I didn't want to hamstring what I could do in my tenant. But yeah, it takes a bit of doing and intentional risky activity to elevate yourself to a risky user. Yeah.
And so by doing that, what you're proving out that, it is possible to do that. And usually in these cases, these are users who are actually probably up to something. So that's why they're called a risky user, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so where the adaptive protection comes into play is that if I'm classified as a risky user and I'm trying to access data, or I'm doing something that an IRM policy is saying, it's not so good, I can actually configure that IRM policy to integrate with that conditional access and force me to do MFA, or enforce me to only access content on the web. I can't download that content. I can't edit it in a thick client. I have to only have access to it at the source of that its location, like you can do with SharePoint settings. And then, the idea behind this is that IRM now is not necessarily just determining if the user is doing something wrong and sending out alerts. It's actually doing something about it. It's actually
in an intelligent way.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's taking into account, okay, so David's already set up as a risky user, so I'm going to be watching him already. But suddenly, David is starting to download content and he's changing names or he's removing labels, things that I have configured in my tenant as being a risky activity. Well, you know what? I'm going to fire something off, and let's just make sure Dave is actually doing what he's supposed to be doing. And maybe it's actually Joanne pretending to be Dave and making him a bad person. So, these are things that you can do. And so, that capability, that dynamic integration, that adaptive protection component of IRM is actually elevating your ability to protect your environment and not react. So you're actually being very much proactive as opposed to reactive. Yeah. And what's great about that is when you create that conditional access policy, really it's very similar to kicking off a Power Automate flow or something along that line. And what I mean by that is you have the full range of the capabilities of conditional access. All you got to do is trigger it, and you're triggering it with your IRM policy. And so if you want to require MFA, if you want to block them from access until someone actually reviews the logs and removes that block, you can do all of that from an IRM policy, and that control is there.
Yeah, so it really ends up just being just another condition for conditional access policy, the risk level.
The risk level, exactly.
Yeah.
And you can have different risks. You can have, is it low, medium, and high? What are the three designations for?
Oh my goodness!
I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
Elevated is the highest, and then
elevated is the highest. Remember that, yeah.
Then medium, and then low, I believe.
Low, yeah. So then you can have different policies depending on that. You have different controls in place.
Yeah.
And so it's a really good tool, capability within that tool. And I think that it is something that all organizations should consider, between that and DLP as well, which we talked about in our last session. Definitely something you should consider when it comes to IRM.
Yeah. So there's upfront work, of course, to get those activities, setting the right risk level for a user, and then deciding which risk level is going to trigger which conditional access policy. Once you have that, base work done, though, it's self-serving, and it just kind of executes the right conditional access policy based on user risk. So it's some work up front, but then it's hands off after the fact.
And let's be honest here, everything that we've ever talked about, everything we ever dealt with the client, it's always upfront work. You're doing a lot of upfront work in order to save yourself some work down the road, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, you want to make sure on those user risk levels that you don't have too few or too many users in that elevated risk level. So there's some work to be done there for sure. Yeah.
What about the policy? Would you group a conditional access policy and a DLP policy in the same IRM? Like, I wouldn't, but I'm just saying what your thoughts are around that.
I'm not sure what you mean. So we have the risk level that is coming out of an IRM policy, and then let's pick on elevated risk. So that could be a condition in a DLP policy, but it could also be a condition in a separate CA policy.
Right. But you can also integrate that into IRM as well. So would you do that in the same IRM policy, or would you separate that out?
Oh, so you're saying that if a DLP policy has a high alert, that it could be an indicator? Is that what you're meaning?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never thought about that. Talk to me.
So my thing is that I don't like combining workloads. And so I like to, so combining that DLP workload into along with along with the conditional access workload. So I would like to have that separation of capabilities in their own policies, because it's easier to manage, and it's easier to control from a granularity perspective. So that's just my take on it. I know that you can usually, if I'm blocking something in conditional access, I'm pretty much removing the capability to do something in a DLP, because you're blocking that capability already. They can't get through conditional access. They can't even get into the system to where DLP is going to affect, right?
Right. Okay. And I didn't know a CA policy could feed back to IRM. Is that through a security alert when you say that?
No, I guess it's similar to a DLP. So if you're accessing it with if it's elevated, you know what? I'm actually getting myself backwards here. I was thinking about the IRM integrating into the other way around. So I was thinking about taking the IRM policy and integrating conditional access into it. It's the other way around. You actually integrate IRM elevated controls into a conditional access policy in a DLP. So
right. Okay.
That disconnect is there already. So I take back my question.
Okay, no, but that's good. I mean, these are complicated, very big solutions. So understanding where all of these integration pieces are is challenging, right? It's key. Yeah. And it's also the strength of it. This is why, you know, all of the Purview solutions and now bringing in Entra Conditional Access, they can all talk to each other, right? So understanding how they're talking to each other and what is going to affect what other solution is really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. We've got one more left in this session. We're going to talk about integration with data lifecycle management. So check us out next week.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Well.